just information that you already can find in the syllabus. It's my contact information, okay? Where to contact me, my office hours. You wanna contact me if you have questions via Canvas first, okay? Always through Canvas. That way I know it's from a student in my summer course. Otherwise, if you do Ch100, sometimes I forget to check that, but if you do it through Canvas, then that'll ensure that you have my undivided attention. All the information that you're gonna find for this course is in Canvas, but you also need to purchase some items. Some of the items you will need is the equipment from Bioscientific. It's about $75. I think we've done pretty good in terms of keeping that cost down. I remember when we started, it was 150. So I sort of asked the department to supplement a lot of the equipment. That way we can keep the cost under $75. And we're able to do that. I think because of inflation, in the fall, it'll go up to $10. So you guys have a deal. You will need a calculator. You need a first aid kit and surgical gloves. You can buy that in any drugstore. Plus the first aid kit is not bad to have around your home. If you already have one, great. You don't have to buy it again. You do need safety goggles, okay? Safety goggles. And you do need other items as indicated by the experiment, okay? And that'll be described as we go along this discussion today. The way the course is structured is everything's online, and you can find the information for the course, the lab manual. You can contact me via email. The experiments and the activities. Activities are like problem sets that you have to complete, and it's worth as much as the experiment, okay? So the problem sets, it's a good way to keep to practice the stuff that you learn in lecture, okay? You also find the midterm and the finals in Canvas, as well as the lab practical. Lab practical is based on experiment number 2. Remember that. The lab practical is based on experiment number 2 and deals with measurements, okay? So keep that in mind. Let's see. And then, of course, you can also find your grade on Canvas, okay? In terms of student learning outcomes, this is what is expected that you will learn by the time you leave this course. You'll be able to demonstrate proper laboratory safety procedures, okay? So within each experiment, there's going to be a description of the safety regulation that is required. Sometimes there's going to be a question in there, but you always need to keep that in mind when you're doing the experiment. You also need to demonstrate proper handling of chemical reagents and chemical waste. The chemical waste you guys are going to be dealing with, you need to collect in a plastic bottle. And at the end of the term, you need to turn that into Miramar College, okay? You also be introduced to common laboratory equipment like the scale, beaker, graduated cylinder, and your lab practical will actually test you in how you are able to use those items. And then finally, you need to be able to demonstrate basic data observation. Observation is like recording what you see during an experiment, the collection of the data, and the interpretation of the data. For all experiment, you should write some sort of observation, what you did, what you saw while you are doing the experiment. If you don't do that, then your lab technique score will suffer. So please keep that in mind. There's always going to be a space, or you can put it on scratch pieces of paper, where you're going to write down something about the experiment, okay? So that has to do with student learning outcomes, SLOs. The course description, again, it's the co-requisite for Chemistry 100, and it's to give you some skills in basic laboratory technique, but more importantly, you guys will learn how to take proper measurements, okay? When you go into the allied health field, you're going to have to measure like volumes or mass or even take the the vitals for patients. So you need to be able to make those measurements. And this course, although you're not going to be taking any vitals for any of the patients, it'll teach you about how to properly, carefully take measurements, okay? And how to use significant figures in order to write down the data that is important and eliminate any data that's not so important, okay? So that's what this course is about. Take a look down here because this is important. Bryce Thompson is our lab tech. If you should have any problems with like the scale, or maybe you run out of chemicals, then contact Bryce because he can help you out. He's going to be working with us all summer, and he's at Miramar College. In fact, for those of you who have not picked up your chemicals, you need to contact Bryce because he'll have the chemicals for you for the experiments. If you don't have the chemicals, you can't do the experiment, and you can't just buy the chemicals from a grocery store or a drugstore. So please keep that in mind. The other thing that Bryce will hand you is the more expensive material, the glassware and the equipment that you will need in order to do the experiment properly. Like one of the things that we provide for you is the scales. That's basically a jeweler scale where you can weigh things. That's because weighing items is an important part of laboratory techniques, okay? So that's a course description and lab tech information. So I already talked about this course objective, the description, co-requisite. You need to be enrolled or have satisfied the Chem 100 lecture course. If you are not enrolled or not satisfied that Chem 100, you're going to be dropped from the lab. Okay, it's a co-requisite. This is a schedule, and you can see that there's practically 2 assignments per week. Okay, so this first week, you guys have a safety quiz and math basics dimensional analysis. Math basics dimensional analysis is basic math, but it has to do with using the rules of measurements and significant figures as well as dimensional analysis. If you go to that module, you'll see a whole bunch of multimedia in order to answer those questions. You want to take advantage of that, okay? So this weekend, this Sunday, June 26th, you need to complete the safety quiz, and the safety quiz will open. In fact, it's already open. I took out the password. I just didn't want anybody to do the safety quiz without all the equipment in order to complete the safety quiz, because you need all your equipment for the very last question. If you do the safety quiz and it's timed, okay, it's timed, and you don't have the equipment, then you're not going to be able to do the last question. The last question basically asks you to take a picture of yourself, either in the background or foreground, with all your equipment laid out. And that way I know that you have the chemicals and the equipment and other supplement material. So that's part of your safety quiz, okay? If you don't have the material, you gotta get it before you complete the safety quiz, okay? And then next week, we have 2 experiments, the penny for your thought, the scientific method, and measurements and the metric system. Experiment number 2 is critical because you have lab practical that uses the concept that you've learned from experiment 2. Okay, so you need to learn that experiment really well or know how to take measurements really well. In terms of the penny lab, you guys need to collect post-1982 pennies, about 25 of them, and pre-1982 pennies, about 25 of them. If you have those, great. I know that as we go further and further into the future, pre-1982 pennies are rare. So what I have done for you is I've measured a whole bunch of pre-1982 pennies, and you can use the data from that measurement, Okay, it's a video basically. I'll show you that when we get to that portion in the discussion in the as I talk about Canvas. Okay, but if you take a look, you'll see that it's separated by colors. This is 1 week, this is another week, this is 1 week, this is another week. You'll see that your lab midterm is right here on July 22nd. Same time as your, same day as your lecture, if you're taking a lecture from me, okay? Lecture midterm will be between 1 and 4, 1 and 3, and then once you finish with that, maybe you give yourself an hour break, and then the lab midterm is between 4 and 7, which includes the lab practical. Okay, which includes the lab practical. Anyway, you can see the schedule right here. These are important dates right here, and just make sure that you keep up with the class, because maybe take one day, like maybe a Friday or a Saturday, to do both experiments. So keep that in mind. These right here in green, they're not experiments. They're what we call problem sets. Activities is what we call it. They're dry labs. They do not require any chemicals or safety goggles. It's just a bunch of questions that will help you with the lecture, like nomenclature. I give you a bunch of names, you give me the formula. I give you a bunch of formula, you give me the name. Okay, so that's what these green items are. These are activities, and there's no mixing of chemicals. You just do the problem set. Okay, so this is just an introduction to the course. It tells you what the course is about, especially an online class, and there's going to be important ways of doing the experiment. You still have 3 parts to an experiment: pre-lab, data, and post-lab. You usually read the experiment and then you complete the pre-lab. Gives you an idea of what the experiment's about. Then when you do the experiment, write your observations, take your measurements, you fill in the data sheet, okay? And then once you've completed the data sheet and you've got all your calculation done, then you can answer the post-lab questions. Sometimes post-lab questions will ask you about the experiments and do some calculations. But those are the 3 things. And the pre-lab and the post-lab, you also need to fill the Canvas supplement work. Basically, it's a similar question that is in Canvas. That way it's automatically graded, but you also have to upload your worksheet with your answers to it. Okay, so don't think of it as double work. Think of the worksheet that you get for the pre-lab and the post-lab as a way to refine your thoughts, write down your answer, and then go into Canvas and then answer those questions. In fact, when you go into Canvas, sometimes I take an open-ended question and I make it a multiple choice question in Canvas. So you want to think about it that way. All right. So anyway, this just is a description of the way this class is conducted. You need to reserve 2 times, July 22nd, which is a Friday, and August 11th, which is a Thursday. Those are your midterm and final. Otherwise, there are no mandatory meetings. I will have once in a while review of the experiment, or I'll show you some videos in which I talk about the experiment in details. But for the most part, if you have questions, email me. We'll set up an appointment if you have any questions that are pressing, and I'll walk you through some of the procedures or how to do some of the calculations. Okay, so that's what this particular page describes. What I'm going through here in PowerPoint is basically the same setup that you guys will see in the course syllabus, okay? The chemicals and the submission process. Remember, the chemicals are important. What you should get from our lab tech is a baggie, okay? And then within each large baggie, you have smaller baggies, and each smaller baggies will have the different experiment. So make sure that you have all the experiments. Remember, we don't have there's, I believe, 13 assignments, but only 8 of them, maybe 7 of them, requires chemical. And that's because of the 9 experiments that are experiment. One is a video where you don't mix any chemicals. You just watch the video and write your observations. The reason why we did that, the administrator doesn't trust you with certain chemicals in that experiment. And the second is a gas law simulation. Okay, so there's actually only 7 experiments in which you mix chemicals. So keep that in mind. So again, you need the 7 diaries for those 7 experiments. And then we also have equipment to take measurements, as well as the material from KLM Bioscientific. Okay, you'll see in the syllabus a list towards the very end of all the equipment you should have from Miramar and from KLM Bioscientific. We'll talk more about that later. When you submit your work, for the pre-lab and the post-lab, you have to also submit the Canvas questions. That pretty much mirrors the questions in your worksheet. In the data sheet, that's where you start writing down the data for your experiment. You got to upload that, okay? And then I need to go through each of your data sheet by hand and grade it by hand, and then I'll give you a score. And the way you figure out what you got for an experiment, all experiments in our activities are 50 points, but you add your pre-lab, your data sheet, and your post-lab, and together it should add up to 50 points. The first 4 experiments, submitting your worksheet will give you an additional 2 points if it's completed correctly. If you do not submit your worksheet, you won't get credit, okay? So you need to submit your worksheet. And the reason why is because I need to see your work, okay? Aside from completing it on Canvas, you need to submit your worksheet. And again, for the first 4 labs, you get extra credit if you do that on top of the points that you would get for those assignments. So there's some incentive on that. So this just describes the chemicals and the way you submit the experimental results. The activities, you just complete the worksheet. If you have extra scratch pieces of paper that you need to submit, then include it. But what you need to do is you need to take a photo or scan it so that the multi-page assignment that you have is one PDF file. It's got to be a PDF file because Canvas, I've set up Canvas so that it only accepts PDF file. You got to show your picture ID on the page, not blocking any of your writing. It could block the text if you have some texts that are pre-written but not your writing or your work. And then upload that with the correct file name. I'll talk more about that shortly, but that's basically what you need to keep in mind when you submit an assignment. That's because this is an online class. Otherwise, if you were in lab, then you would just complete the lab, complete the worksheet, and submit that. But this is an online lab, okay? Your attendance is important, and your attendance is based on you turning in your assignments and logging into Canvas, okay? If you keep up with the work, that's not a problem, okay? But if you miss a week or 2 of assignments, then you've missed like maybe a month and a half worth of work compared to the regular semester. And I'll email you, figure out what's going on. But if you can't catch up, it's best to drop at that point, okay? This will be a busy course, and it's twice as fast as a regular 16-week semester. So please keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind. So this right here is more information about your attendance policy, and then just making sure, since we're not interacting, you don't have to worry about social distancing, okay? Don't worry about that. The lowest of your experiment is drop, experiment or activity. is dropped, and then your grade is going to be based on the remaining. So if you have a bad day or you miss one, don't worry, we'll just drop that one. This is how you guys are going to be graded. You've got 13 experiments and activities, right? One is dropped, so there'll be 12. That is going to be the basis of your grade. 12 times 50, 600 points. You have a syllabus quiz, a safety quiz, a midterm, and a final. All that adds up to 275 points. You've got 2 lab practicals, a midterm and the final. Each is worth 25 points. So that's 50 points. And then you have a lab technique and your participation. And that'll be 75 points. Part of that lab technique score is going to be based on you returning the equipment to Miramar College. The stuff that we issued you, that came from Bryce, the KLM material is yours to keep. You paid for that. But the material that we issued, like the scale and some other items, the more expensive items, you need to return that. And then you also need to put all the waste chemical in a plastic bottle and turn that in as well. It's okay to mix the waste chemicals together. They're not going to react with each other. Okay, so don't keep it in separate containers. Just put it in one empty plastic, like a couple of pints. Okay, 12 ounces, 16 ounces will work. You won't generate more waste than that. So at the end of the summer, all this adds up to 1,000 points. Again, I like the 1,000-point system because I know that if you have 918 points at the end of the term, you've got 91.8%, that's an A. If you've got 550 points at the end of the term, that's 55%. That's not quite passing. That's a D. That's not the grade that you want. So I like the 1,000-point system because it's easy to do the math. Okay, so this is the grading evaluation and how you guys are going to be graded. Here again is the breakdown. Okay, this is the breakdown for the different parts of the assessment or your participation. Then some important notes. The important notes are basically just things to keep in mind, like using your calculator. I think you saw in the announcement that you really need to know how to use the double-E key in your calculator, because if you don't know how to punch in numbers in scientific notation in your calculator, there are times where your answer will be off by 10, and that'll be the wrong answer if you did the calculation correctly. So please keep that in mind. You also are responsible for like safety. You gotta wear the safety personal protective equipment, PPE, whenever you do the experiment. Whenever you take a photo of yourself, you gotta be wearing your PPEs, okay? Otherwise, that's a lab techniques demerit. So please keep that in mind. Always remember to email me through Canvas because I can give that immediate attention, okay? Remember that the midterm, final, and I don't think you have any quizzes, but you do have midterm and final. Those are time, as well as the lab practical. The experiments themselves, they're not time. The activities are not time. You have the whole week, but there is a deadline. If you don't get it into the deadline, then you're going to get a 0 grade. There is a grace period. The experiments and the dry labs activities are due by midnight each Sunday. But if you don't get it complete, you do have till 11 a.m. the next morning to turn that in. If after that time you haven't submitted, you're not going to get a score for that assignment. So I decided to be a little bit lenient. I used to not even have a grace period, but I know it's difficult, and some of you are just bad procrastinators. Don't use the 11 a.m. the next morning as your deadline, however. If you've got too many late assignments turned in, I can see it in the grade book, and your lab technique score, your your benefit of the doubt is going to be questioned. Usually what'll happen is that if I see improvement at the end, and you're between two grades, I'll give you the higher grade. But if you've submitted too much late assignments, then you don't really get the benefit of the doubt. So please keep that in mind, okay? Also, the other thing too is that when you complete your assignment and you submit that, and maybe you'll see an initial score, don't contact me asking why you got a low score. I have to go in and grade each of those three parts, the pre-lab, the data sheet, the post-lab by hand. I got to double check that. And sometimes, you know, when I'm rushing these things, I'll make an oversight. And no doubt you let me know that I missed something, and I'll be more than happy to go back and correct it. But you got to give me some time, because there's 2 labs, 24 students apiece. I've been adding students, 24 students apiece. So that's 48 students times 3 times 2, because there's 2 experiments that are due per week. That's a lot of papers that I have to go through. Okay, so please keep that in mind when you try to look for your score. It might be delayed a few days. I'll get to it as soon as I can. Okay. And I really do want to make sure that you guys know what you have in the course, so you know how to gauge your progress. Anyway, that's the thing that I need to let you know, okay? In terms of showing that it's your work, these are the things that you need to do. If you do not have a college ID, okay, then your driver's license will suffice, but you have to redact it. Redact it basically means to hide all the vital information. The only information I want from your ID, your college ID, you should show your face, of course, your name, and your college ID number, okay? No one's going to use that for false identity, but for your driver's license, hide your driver's license number. I don't need any information other than your name and your face. Okay, other than your name and your face. And then you need to stick it everywhere. All the assignments that you complete, like in the data sheet, pre-lab sheet, worksheet, you need to show that, and you need to place it in such a way that it doesn't hide your work. When you submit experimental photos, you gotta show your ID. If you're taking a screenshot, take a picture of your screen. Then you want to make sure that you put your college ID. This is the video lab. It's also going to be seen on your computer. Put your college ID right there. That way I know that it's authentic work. The reason why we did this is because during the COVID times, I get this crazy note from Pakistan. Apparently, a PhD student there is complaining that one of the students taking my class is hired him to do the experiment and then submitting it in his own name, okay? And apparently he didn't pay him correctly, or he chipped him or whatever. But we caught that student, expelled that student, and from that point on, you gotta show. Of course, if you really are going to be dishonest, there's ways around it, but this just makes it more difficult for you to be dishonest. You gotta show your picture ID. And if you can also show yourself doing the experiment. So anyway, that's required. And then when you upload these items, you got to make sure it's one PDF file, and then you give it a proper file name, your last name, first initial, the assignment title. You can keep it short, A1 math, E1 penny. You know, it already gives me an idea that that's the experiment that deals with penny for your thought, scientific method. You don't have to write the whole thing. E2 density, that is descriptive enough, some sort of short description identifying that experiment. The A1 tells you in its activity, E1 tells you it's an experiment number 1, and then the date. Okay, so that's what's required, and then you upload it, and then wait for me to go through it and give it a grade based on your work. So this is basically the format that we would like to see, I would like to see. Okay, and then just completing the assignments again. I give you a whole page at the end of the syllabus on how to do this, and a checklist of what you need to do so that everything's complete. Okay, you haven't missed a step. You won't be deducted because you skip a step. So that's going to be described in that page in your syllabus. Okay, and then you guys can just read the rest of this: disruptive behavior, dropping the class, safety, collaboration policy. You guys can read that on your own. I won't really dwell on it. This is the special service. Like if you are a DSPS student, you gotta let me know so I can make the accommodations for you. Okay, if you need some tutoring, then there's the tutor center at Miramar College, or you could just ask me. I'm your best tutor. Okay, and I'm free, so keep that in mind. The help center is not active this summer, as well as our Chemical Society affiliate. Then this right here is just safety, honesty, policy. That's this right here describes the honesty conduct policy. This tells you the difference between collaboration and dishonesty behavior. So make sure you read that, because your syllabus quiz asks you a whole bunch of questions concerning academic honesty policy, the difference between a collaboration and academic dishonesty. Okay, so please keep that in mind. This right here is an open letter from the chair about some of the major cheating that was going on during the COVID crisis. So I put this here because if you dare to cheat and we catch you, you don't want the records from Miramar College, because it's going to show that you were disciplined. So please don't cheat in this course or in any course. This is just an inventory sheet for each experiment. What equipment is provided from KLM, what equipment is supplied by Miramar, and what you have to supply. So for each experiment, I break it down for you. Experiment number 4, that's this right here. You don't need any of these. Why? Because it's a video experiment. Experiment number 7 is not even here. Well, here it is. It's a gas law simulation. You don't need any equipment. So you want to use this as and it's also written in each of the lab procedures, okay, as far as what you need to complete that experiment. This right here is the chemical list that you will need. So it's basically this. And so you can take your chemical baggies and double check it against this. I need to correct something here. This is actually experiment 4, and this is actually experiment 1. And the reason why I forgot to switch this is because last year, remember last spring, we had to do remote learning for the first 3 weeks because of the uptick in COVID. Well, I had to switch out experiment 4 and experiment 1. Experiment 4, there wasn't any chemicals. Students can do that without coming into campus. In experiment 1, you do need to take measurements. So keep that in mind. Okay, so this is the chemical list. And then here, for each of the experiment, I tell you what items you will need based on the inventory list. And this is the equipment that you guys should have after receiving KLM equipment and Miramar equipment. And this is the KLM and this is Miramar. So keep that in mind. Items like the safety goggles, you need to purchase that on your own. Okay. Yeah, the syllabus quiz, it's 60 minutes, okay? If you ran out of time, then you were pacing yourself. I'll give you, there's a makeup, but there's a penalty in terms of the makeup. You can talk to me later, okay? That's after the deadline of the first syllabus quiz. Please, 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 in these time assignments, keep pace, because it is time, and everyone's got to play at the same level, except if you're a DSPS student. If you're a DSPS student, then you get time and a half, or depending on your accommodation. Anyway, let me continue on with this because I only have about 20 minutes, and I really want to get to Canvas and talk about that. Again, this is a summary of the checklist. This is the checklist right here of what you need to turn in per experiment. This gives you a full description of what to do for each experiment. That way you won't forget anything. So this right here is a checklist page of what to do per experiment. The activity is different because all you do is you answer the questions, take a photo, put it into one PDF, make sure that in your photo you have your ID, and then submit that. Okay. If you want to create, if you have multiple pages and you want to create one PDF file and you have a PC, this is the procedure to do that. If you have a Mac, this is the procedure to do that. The other thing you can do is there's a lot of apps these days where you can, it's a scanner app where you can take multiple pictures and it'll basically stitch it for you to create one file. So I know that if you have an iPhone, Notes will do that for you. The app Notes, that's part of the Apple software family. You do a scan, it'll ask you to take pictures of multiple pages, and then it'll stitch it for you to create one PDF file. So anyway, there are many ways to take multiple pages and stitch it to one PDF file. Don't forget to include your ID in each of those pages. And don't forget to give it the proper file name when you upload it. Those are the two things that you really need to remember. Otherwise, I'll spend all my time trying to figure out, okay, where is the ID to show authenticity? Whose file is this that doesn't have their name on it? Please make sure you do that to make my job easier. And then we're into Canvas. And let me talk to you about Canvas right here. Remember that if you want to email me, you do so by clicking this inbox. And then you can just find me here and then write me an email, okay? But you want to use the Canvas email system, and that's simply by clicking this inbox. If you receive a message from me, you'll find it right here. Okay, you'll find it right here after you click the inbox. To look at the daily or the weekly assignments that are due, click on calendar. And when you click on calendar, you got to make sure that you highlight your course. This is the lecture. I'm going to hide that and click on our lab. And here are all the assignments that is coming up. Okay. These are the assignments that are coming up for June. And you notice everything's loaded on a Sunday. Don't wait till Sunday to do all that work. Pace yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to get overwhelmed. Everything has a due date on a Sunday. For some of them, you have a grace period of 11 o'clock the next morning. But don't wait till Sunday to finish the safety quiz. As soon as you can, take the safety quiz, submit it. That way you have one less item to worry about Sunday. Let's take a look at July. Here you'll see that in July, everything's loaded on a Sunday. So again, don't wait till Sunday to do this experiment. Otherwise, you're just going to get overwhelmed. Okay. You got a syllabus quiz that's due on the 28th. There's a makeup on the 29th. And for those of you who forgot about timing yourself, because the syllabus quiz is 60 minutes, then you can do the makeup. Anyway, you have a midterm on the 22nd. Let's take a look at August. You got a final on the 11th. So the calendar gives you a quick view of what's coming up, what's due for that week. Let's take a look at home. Home is where you'll see the announcement, the top 3 announcement. If you want to see the details of the announcement, just click on the announcement here, and you'll see the threads of all the announcement I've posted so far. You want to make sure that you read this right here, iScanner, if you're going to create one PDF file, but this one right here, using your scientific calculator, that's really important. Read, watch that, because that's critical. Too many times students probably lose about 5-6 points because they are not using the calculator correctly. So the rest of these, if you're math phobic, watch this TED talk. It's really good in terms of making mistakes. So that's the announcement. You'll find that here in the homepage as well. You'll find, this will take you to the lab website. Don't worry about the site. I think it's dated. Just use the one in Canvas. This is the Google Drive. The Google Drive is where you're going to find the lab manual, where you can download the lab manual. So this is for the Miramar College MMC. This is for the on-campus lab. This is right here is for the lab that you guys are doing right now, the online lab. So you want to click on that, and you can download the whole lab manual if you want, or within each of the experiments, you can download those sections, each experiment. So this is taking forever because it's a long file. I'm going to skip that. Okay, so that's where you find it. You can also download the lab manual right here. I don't know why it's not. I got to check that right there. I guess I've got to, let's see. I guess I have to sign into my, you got to have a Google account in order to access this. So I'm going to see if I can. There. Okay. So this is my Google Drive account, and the lab manuals here, or the complete lab manual, or each experiment. Experiment number 1, E1, lab 2. It's lab 2 because math basic is lab 1. But it's experiment 1 because that's our first experiment. Math basic, lab 1, activity 1. I don't know why this is not in order, okay? Yeah, I don't know how to put it in order, but you can see that each of these are the different experiments or activity that you can download per page. Let's get out of here. Let's take a look at the course syllabus. This is the current course syllabus, and you want to make sure that you read this when you do the syllabus quiz. Here is the module. I want to spend some time on this because this is where you guys are going to be spending a lot of your time. Okay, this first part is just information about the course. It takes you back to the home page, so don't worry too much about that. This course information, you have the PowerPoint that I just presented earlier. You can download it right here. This is the PowerPoint that I just showed you. So it basically talked about the course syllabus. This right here is last summer orientation video. It's available now. I'm not going to show you the fall or the spring terms because it's 16 weeks. The pacing of that particular course is not going to be in sync with the summer class. This is where you can download the syllabus, the schedule. Here's the lab manual. This is a more direct way of getting the lab manual. See, I give you multiple areas where you can download the lab manual. You can download this completely. It's 137 pages. Or you can go to each experiment. Let me show you. After all of this, you guys have a syllabus quiz right here. It's due June 28th. There's a makeup that's not active yet. You don't see it because I don't have this highlighted. And then week 1, you want to watch the safety video. Watch this 2 safety video. And then when you're done with that safety video, you want to take the safety quiz right here. 60 minutes again, okay? It's a 60-minute safety quiz. And in the safety quiz, don't do it unless you have all your equipment, because at the very end, you're going to be asked to upload a photo. Let me show you that real quick. You're going to be asked to upload the photo of these items. The photo you submit must include your college picture ID, the equipment from KLM, the equipment from Miramar College, the lab coat, safety goggles. And if you need to see an example of that, I don't know why there's 2 names here. I think I show an example. Yeah, this one shouldn't be here, of what it should look like. I'll update it, but these things have to be included, and then you need to upload it.
I think it's in the assignment.
Canvas. Okay, so don't do the safety quiz until you've got all these items. Let me just see this real quick. Hold on. I'm looking for this right here. Okay. It should look like this. Let me show this. No, that's not it either. Into that file. Okay, I don't have it, but I'll give you an example of what that safety photo should look like when everything's compressed. Okay, I don't want to spend more time since we only have 10 minutes. So in terms of that, that's safety quiz. Let's get out of here and let's look at an experiment. So take care of your syllabus quiz, take care of your safety quiz, and then you guys, your first assignment is this activity. Here's a bunch of tutorials on dimensional analysis and a review on activity number 1. This is basically a my discussion of how to answer scientific the activity 1. My preview of that, so you guys can watch that. It'll give you hints. Let's take a look at the first experiment. I really want to spend time with that. Your first experiment is, let's do experiment number 2. Okay, no, let's do experiment number 1. If you click on the information page right here, what you will see is this little grid. It gives you a flow chart, a small description of what this experiment's about, but this is the Zoom video for that particular experiment. This right here is the experiment that's taken from the lab manual, and only this experiment, not the complete lab manual. So when you click on that, this is the entire experiment number 1, all that. You can print that or read it on your computer. And then this right here, let's go back to that. This is the worksheet for the pre-lab. And it's only the worksheet for the pre-lab. This is the data sheet for the experiment. This is what you need to complete when you're completing the experiment. Right here, you need to fill this in, and then it tells you what photos you need to take to satisfy this data. Let me go back. Remember I told you that pre-1982 pennies are hard to come by? Well, this is the data for the pre-82 pennies. So you just want to click on this, and then it'll take you to a site where it gives you the mass of 10 pre-82 pennies. You have to play each video, watch, you can expand it, watch the mass, record the mass, okay? And then, well, this is actually the mass of 10 pennies. That's not the individual pennies. Here's the mass of a 1972 pennies, 72 penny. Let's do this. Okay. Stop this. Let's play this. And then I'm gonna expand that. So in other words, I know it's hard to find pre-1982 pennies, so I did it for you. This is the mass of that 1972 penny. Then I put it against the ruler so you can measure the diameter of this penny. You can note the condition of this penny because that's one of the data. And then I put it on its edge so you can measure the thickness of the penny. Those are all measurements you need. Okay, and for the post-1982 pennies, you guys will have to do it on your own because there's plenty of post-1982. But pre-1982, I do it for you. Okay, so that's the data set. Let's go back. And what are you going to do with that data set? You guys are going to fill this right here. Okay, where it says, pre-lab. You guys are going to, oh, this is the pre-lab, sorry. This is not the data. We go back. The data is going to be found right here. Collapse that real quick so that's easier to navigate. So this is the data right here. What you guys are going to do is you could download that data sheet, fill this out. Remember, you're going to put the year, the mass, the diameter, that's how far, edge to edge, the thickness, and then the rating. The star rating tells you 1 star is very poor, 5 stars like mint, and then a description, a written description. You do that, you answer these questions, that's your data set, and then you submit that. In terms of the post-lab and the pre-lab questions, you want to upload or answer this through Canvas. Notice it's like a multiple choice questions or a drop-down menu. And then you also need to upload your worksheet. Okay, you need to upload your worksheet. So there's 2 things that you need to do for the pre-lab and the post-lab. You need to complete the worksheet and then you need to answer the questions in Canvas. And if you look at the question in Canvas, it basically takes a lot of the open-ended questions and make it multiple choice. So it'll narrow the correct choice down. But that basically is what an experiment entails. Again, let me show you the math basics real quick. I mean the measurement lab real quick. So you can see a different experiment. You click on the information. You click on the information, you get all of this, the complete experiment, the pre-lab worksheet, the data sheet, the post-lab. And then these are multimedia related to that experiment. So you can see, give you a preview of what that experiment about, how to make measurements correctly. Okay, watch these Zoom sessions in which I taught my class in the past on how to do the measurements correctly. But this is the information page. There's nothing due on this page. You need to go down here where it says pre-lab. Right here where it says pre-lab. You click on that. You fill out the questions in Canvas. You upload the worksheet right here. and then you're complete with you've completed the pre-lab. Then you go back and you do the data sheet, and the data sheet again will be found right here under module, right here, the data sheet. Complete the data sheet and then upload the file on this page. What you guys will see is something that looks like this. Right now it's not available because that's not going to open until June 27th, but when it is available, you just click on this start assignment and then you can upload your work. Okay, and then the last thing that you need to do for each of the experiment is complete the post-lab, answer the worksheet post-lab, and then complete the Canvas post-lab, and then submit it. Okay, remember that for the data sheet, you also need to include pictures of your experimental procedures. All pages should have your picture ID. But that basically is what this lab is about, or this course is about. So for this weekend, probably next week, probably around Thursday, I'll have a short, and it's optional again, review session of what to expect for the penny experiment and the measurement experiment, just to give you some highlight. But for this week, what you guys need to remember is that you need to complete the safety quiz, and you need to do the math basic. And for the math basic, you need to watch these two videos. If you click on math basics, there's a bunch of multimedias here that can help you answer those questions. Okay, but that basically is it. Again, for the information page, there's nothing due. You actually have to go to this right here to complete the Canvas version and then upload the worksheet. This is the Canvas version of that worksheet. And the numbers might be slightly different, but it's the same concepts, okay? That's because whereas a hard copy can only be one version, a computer simulation can be multiple version. But that's basically what I have for you guys today. I appreciate you guys. It's about 9:01, so we're a couple of minutes over time. But if you have any questions, let me know, or you can fire me an email